Hi there, Sandra Parker here from Just a Tonic, and on this YouTube video, I want to talk about alcohol and anxiety and when we use alcohol for anxiety, what happens, why we do it, why it doesn't work, what we can do instead. So I want to start off by saying when I was younger, I would have described myself as an anxious person. I thought that that was just who I was, and I thought I was always going to be like that. And when I was a student, I had panic attacks. And if anyone's had a panic attack, you know how horrible that is and how scary it is. So I had panic attacks for a short period in my life. I always was worried that they were coming back. But I would have said that whenever there was anything I was remotely concerned about, I found that I went into a pattern of being really, really anxious about it, and it would ruminate in my mind. I wouldn't really be able to switch off. It would be exhausting, and all the other horrible negative things that come from when you are consumed by anxiety. So, alcohol creeps in quite quickly when we're in this place, right? Because when we feel anxious, when we've had anything stressful or difficult, we'll get lots of messages telling us it's a good idea to have a drink, right? If you've ever heard anyone saying, oh, a glass of wine will take the edge off it, or you've had a difficult day, you need a drink, right? That's us as a society endorsing the idea that alcohol helps with anxiety. So when we have any emotion that doesn't feel good, we drink alcohol, and because alcohol it does quite a few different things. One of the things it does is it temporarily numbs us out, so it will dull down our thoughts, it will dull down our cognitive thinking. And so if we're feeling anything that's uncomfortable or thinking about something we find uncomfortable or difficult or scary, then we'll become less aware of it. And that becoming less aware of it can feel good, right? So our brain quickly learns that alcohol helps us with anxiety, and that becomes a really powerful behavior that we turn to again and again and again. And it gets to the point where if we typically feel stressed or anxious about our job, for example, at the end of the working day, the desire for alcohol will come up before we even have the anxious thoughts. So our brain thinks it's protecting us, it thinks it's doing a good thing, but we end up wanting to have a drink even when we don't feel anxious, because we've learned that if we have that, we won't feel anxious for a short space of time. So that's what happens. And so that might sound like, well, okay, that makes us feel less anxious, right? But the important thing to know is it's short term. We might feel a bit less anxious for a short space of time, but here's the kicker. Once the alcohol wears off, we're going to feel worse, because the thing that made us anxious is still there, but we're less able to handle it. So the other thing that we need to be aware of that can happen is sometimes it doesn't work when we drink alcohol for anxiety. Sometimes we don't even get that immediate relief, right? If you've ever heard of or experienced someone who gets drunk and they get emotionally volatile, or they get sad, or they get angry, that's an example where, because alcohol stops us from our processing the way we normally do, it impairs our cognitive functioning. What happens when we have a drink is we can sometimes get fixated on the thing that we're trying to avoid, right? So that's like even worse. So you think you're going to get a little bit of relief, and actually it makes it worse. Now let's just say you get a little bit of relief. That alcohol will make you want, the drink you've had will make you want to have another one. You might keep drinking until you pass out, and at that point you could say, well, I wasn't anxious, but you'll either wake up in the middle of the night or the next day, and when the alcohol leaves your system, you're going to feel worse than before, and the thing that you were trying to avoid is still there. So it's helpful to know that that's the pattern, right? Because if we don't know that's the pattern, we don't really know how to change it. But if we know that's the pattern, then, and the other thing I think is really helpful to know is the only thing alcohol will ever do is give you a little bit of short-term relief. So as somebody that had anxiety all my life, what I found incredibly exciting and liberating was the understanding that if we have anxiety, it doesn't need to be something that we always have, right? There's a fantastic book out called Personality Isn't Permanent, and one of the most exciting discoveries that in terms of mental health, and this isn't a new thing, this is like in the last sort of like 50 years, is the understanding that we can change traits that don't serve us. Our personality is not fixed. And so if somebody has a tendency towards anxiety, there's lots of things you can do about it. So for me, I haven't drank for 7 years. And yes, if I don't work on my mental health, then I could go back down the anxiety route, but I can recognize it in advance, and there's lots of things I can do. I find things like journaling really helpful, sitting and saying, you know, what's the worst that can happen, doing a meditation, like getting really clear about my anxious thoughts. There's lots of different things that we can do. And so it might feel like alcohol is a solution, but if you are using alcohol for anxiety, I would recommend that you notice, well, how do you feel immediately after the drink? How do you feel a couple of hours after? And how do you feel the next day? Because once you can see alcohol for what it is, you can start to challenge it and you can start to change it. If this resonates with you, please subscribe to my channel and let me know if you've got any questions. Thanks.